For decades, Canada's skies echoed with American engines. The F-18 Hornets, loud, reliable, and unmistakably US-made, had guarded its borders since the Cold War, but now, something has changed, something that sent an unmistakable chill through the Pentagon's war rooms. At first glance, it seemed like a routine procurement story. Canada needed new jets, the old Hornets were aging, their wings tired, their electronics decades behind modern threats. The world assumed the next fighter would be American, an F-35 of course. It was almost tradition. But then came whispers. Reports from Ottawa, meetings behind closed doors, and one name kept surfacing, Gripen E. A jet built not by Lockheed Martin, not by Boeing, but by Saab. And suddenly, the Pentagon's confidence turned into concern, because if Canada, a founding NATO member and a longtime buyer of US weapons, even considered Sweden's fighter, it meant something much bigger than a jet deal. It meant Washington's monopoly on Western air power was cracking. Let's rewind. For decades, the United States dominated the skies with its fifth-generation marvel, the F-35 Lightning II, a stealth, sensor-packed, trillion-dollar symbol of American air supremacy. Nations lined up to buy it. Some didn't even need it. They bought it to stay politically close to Washington. But not everyone was convinced. Sweden, a small neutral country with fewer people than some US states, decided to go its own way, while others spent billions chasing invisible stealth coatings and complex systems that required entire armies of engineers. Sweden took a different approach. They asked one question: what if we just build the smartest jet instead of the most expensive one? And from that question, the Gripen was born. Fast forward to 2025 and the world is no longer simple. Russia's war in Ukraine has rewritten the rules of modern combat. NATO countries are rethinking speed, flexibility, and cost. Suddenly, the old logic of bigger is better doesn't feel so smart anymore. Enter the Gripen E. The new evolution of Sweden's fighter. A jet designed not to dominate through size or stealth, but through adaptability. It can take off from highways, it can be refueled by a single truck, and it can be repaired in the field by just 6 technicians. Not 60. While the F-35 needs custom hangars, data links and an army of IT support, the Gripen can refuel and relaunch from a frozen road in 20 minutes. In a war of attrition, like the one unfolding in Europe, that kind of agility isn't just useful, it's survival. So when Canada's test pilots got behind the controls of the Gripen E, they weren't just testing another jet, they were testing an idea, a new way of thinking about air power, and what they found shocked them. The Gripen's systems weren't complicated, they were elegant. Its software, modular. Its sensors, fast and intuitive. Instead of relying on classified United States tech or centralized control, the Gripen allowed Canada to keep its independence, to upgrade and modify the aircraft on its own terms. It was a fighter built for sovereignty, not dependency, and that's where the Pentagon's headache began. See, the F-35 isn't just a jet, it's a network, a massive United States-controlled ecosystem. Every part of it, from software to spare parts, runs through American systems. It's powerful, yes, but it also means you don't fully own what you buy. And for Canada, a country that prides itself on autonomy, that's a problem. So when Ottawa began to see how the Gripen could be operated independently, how it could share data with NATO allies without handing control back to Washington, a quiet realization set in. Maybe true defense doesn't come from buying the most expensive aircraft, maybe it comes from owning the one you can truly control. The moment the news broke that Canada was seriously considering the Gripen, the Pentagon reacted, not publicly, but politically. Behind the scenes, meetings were called, lobbyists went to work, pressure began to build. Because this wasn't just about Canada. If one NATO country defected from the F-35 program, others might follow. Finland had already looked north, Brazil had chosen the Gripen, the Czech Republic was expanding its Gripen fleet. Now, if Canada, a G7 nation with close military ties to the United States, joined that list, it could trigger what one analyst called a strategic embarrassment for Washington. After all, what does it say when even America's friends decide the Swedish way makes more sense? The turning point came during a joint test exercise. Canadian pilots had the opportunity to fly both jets, the F-35 and the Gripen E, in simulated scenarios. The feedback, well, it leaked out months later. The F-35 impressed everyone with its stealth and sensor fusion. But it also came with what pilots referred to as friction. There were complex systems and software restrictions. Meanwhile, the Gripen, pilots described it as natural, agile, a machine that did what you wanted without fighting you. One pilot reportedly said, "It feels like it's reading my mind." For fighter pilots, that's the ultimate compliment. By the time those results reached Ottawa, the conversation had shifted. It wasn't about buying a Swedish jet anymore. It was about choosing independence, about sending a message to the world that Canada could make its own decisions, on its own terms. And that's when the Pentagon felt it, the ripple, the shockwave. Because Canada wasn't just testing a fighter, it was testing America's grip on NATO's future. Behind the scenes, military insiders in Washington began discussing the Gripen Effect. There was this growing belief that the world doesn't need to depend solely on U.S. defense giants anymore, that smaller, smarter nations, like Sweden, could now compete head-to-head with the most powerful military-industrial complex on Earth. It was more than symbolism, it was strategy. The Gripen E represented a new kind of warfare, cheaper, faster, more autonomous. And nations watching Ukraine's air war understood this clearly. The side that can repair, rearm, and relaunch the fastest wins. In that sense, the Gripen wasn't just a jet, it was a philosophy, a quiet rebellion against over-engineering and overspending. And that's what Canada's move represents today. It's a signal to the entire defense world that the old order, where America dictated and others followed, is, well, fading. Sweden didn't set out to challenge the United States, it just wanted to prove that brains can beat budgets, and that independence is worth more than stealth. And now, because of Canada, that idea is echoing across hangars and boardrooms around the world. From Washington to Warsaw, every defense planner is asking the same quiet question: do we really need to spend billions to stay strong, or do we just need to be smarter? Because if the Gripen has proven anything, it's that true power doesn't always roar. Sometimes, it hums, efficiently, quietly, from a cold Nordic runway. And as one Canadian pilot reportedly said after flying it, "This isn't just another jet, this is the future, and it doesn't belong to anyone." In a sky full of giants, Sweden built the underdog that made them all look twice. And now, because of Canada, the world finally understands what the Pentagon fears most, that the smartest jet doesn't need to be the biggest one.